Bahir Nisingo, Yare Nisingo, Bahir Nisingo, Yare Nisingo, Nisinga Madim Sharanam Kapare, Avatara Kamala Varena Kam Adhuta Singha Dalita Ranya Kashipu Dano Bring Keshavadita Nari Rupa Raja Gadisha Raja Gadisha Raja Gadisha Adhuta Singha Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Jaya Nrsinga Dev 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 Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj My dear Lord Nrsingadev, please bless everyone in this room that they may be protected from all evil intention, all misfortune, all badness, and may their path to pure devotional service and love of Godhead be open wide for them. May you guard them at every step. All those who agree with this prayer in part or in whole say Haribol! Haribol! Okay, we're going to talk about altitude and attitude.
Altitude and attitude.
So, say a quick Om Jnana Tamarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmetam Jaina Tasmai Sri Guru Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master is opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So, most of us are somewhat spiritual people here in the room. We've had some experience or we're interested in spiritual life. So I thought I would talk about what is real advancement in spiritual life. What does it mean to go forward in spiritual life? What does it mean to actually have an advanced, enlightened consciousness? And what is necessary? So this word Krishna consciousness, we're the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. This Krishna consciousness is the highest stage of spiritual enlightenment or spiritual awareness. This means understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead in full. So in the Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the Bhagavat Purana, the supreme cream of all Vedic wisdom, it's described that out of all the Vedas, the Bhagavatam is the topmost Purana, Amala Purana, the supreme Purana, which is spotless and pure. And it says, Krishna Swadamo Bhagate Dharma Jnana Devisa. That this Bhagavatam is brilliant like the sun, and it appeared just after Krishna departed for his own abode. Accompanied by Jnana and Dharma, this Bhagavat Purana will bring light to those who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of the age of Kali. So that's us. We've lost our vision due to the dense darkness in this age. So the Bhagavatam explains a nice verse. It says, Vedanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yajnanam advyam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdite. That the supreme absolute truth, the supreme transcendence is understood in three ways. One as Brahman, one as Paramatma, and one as Brahman. As Bhagavan, excuse me. So the preliminary understanding is Brahman. One comes to understand Brahman, which in Sanskrit means the truth or the basic spiritual substance of everything. So one comes to realize that there's a unity between, that everything is made of the same spiritual substance. This is called Brahman realization. And then as one elevates themselves to a higher level, one realizes what's called Paramatma, which is that the Supreme Lord is within everybody's heart and is localized. So that's a higher level of realization. And beyond that, there's this Bhagavaniti Shabdite, that this Bhagavan realization is realizing that there is a supreme transcendental personality outside of time and space from whom everything comes and whom everything originated and is emanating. To understand and know such a person in factuality is called Krishna consciousness or God consciousness, which is the highest platform of spiritual understanding. So this Krishna consciousness movement is meant to bring about an awakening of one's dormant God consciousness so that they may become happy all the time and blessed at every step. So there's one nice statement Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master, who brought this Krishna consciousness movement to the West, makes in the book called The Nectar of Instruction. In the introduction to the Nectar of Instruction, Srila Prabhupada gives an instruction. He says that advancement in spiritual life is upon the attitude of the practitioner. So advancement in spiritual life is dependent upon the attitude of the practitioner. So this is a very, very simple yet powerful realization. So our progressive advancement is in direct accordance with our attitude. So therefore, we have to have a proper attitude in performing devotional activities, spiritual activities, in order for us to actually get the taste, get the experience of what is actual God consciousness. If we have a bad attitude or an improper attitude, we will not be able to make progress. Does that make sense? So Krishna says, Yetam mam prapadyante, tam tataiva bhajamyaham, that as one surrenders unto me, I reciprocate with him accordingly. So we get what we give in so many ways. Actually, we get a lot more than we give. But there's a proportion there. We give a little bit, Krishna gives a lot. We give a little bit more, Krishna gives a lot more. And so if we don't have a proper attitude, it's just all theory. We're not making any advancement. We're kind of in the doldrums of crossing this ocean of material suffering, which is what everybody really wants to do. We want to cease this suffering condition that one experiences in the material world. And if you actually want to come to the platform of freedom, liberation, then one has to have the proper attitude. It's simple, but it's very profound. So the attitude of someone practicing spiritual life is very important. And what is that attitude we must cultivate? So we back up a quick second. What is the way in which we can actually cross this ocean of material existence in this world? How do we cross this ocean? What is our actual means for crossing this ocean in this age of Kali? Hare Nam, yes, chanting Hare Krishna. Hare Nama, Hare Nama. Hare Nama eva kevalam kalo nasteva 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 gatir anyataha. And in this age of Kali, in this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, there is no other way, no other way, no other way but to chant the holy name, chant the holy name, chant the holy name. This is the prescribed Yuga Dharma for the age of Kali. And if one wants to reach that highest and most transcendental abode, one must engage themselves in chanting the holy names of the Lord. All the scriptures confirm this. The Bible confirms this. One who calls upon the name shall be delivered. Psalms, last verse of Psalms, one should sing the name of the Lord from morning till evening with drums and cymbals, which is what we do. So we're following the Psalms. In the Quran it says, God has many beautiful names, one should sing upon them, one should call upon them. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, of sanctifying things, of sacrifices, I am the chanting of the holy name, japa. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam it says, the doubtless and fearless way to attain perfection for all is the chanting of the holy names, following in the ways of the great authorities. Whether one is a yogi, full of freedom, no material desire, or one is full of material desire, the doubtless and fearless way to success is the constant chanting Harinamanu Kirtanam. constant chanting of the holy name. This is our way to success. So if our attitude is the key factor in advancing in spiritual life, then and chanting the holy names is the means, so we have to have the proper attitude in chanting the holy names. This is very important. So there are actually 10 aparadhs in chanting the holy name. 10 what we call offenses. The Sanskrit word is aparadhs. There are 10 things that remove us from success when we chant. So one can chant and chant and chant, but I'm not feeling it. I'm not getting where you're at. I'm not feeling this freedom from material desire. I'm not becoming free from lust, envy, anger, greed, and illusion. I'm not feeling blissful at every step. So does the chanting of the holy name not work, or is it our attitude that doesn't work? The process is foolproof, but the attitude in which we take must be proper. Therefore, when we commit these aparadhs or these offenses at the lotus feet of the holy name, we don't make progress in spiritual life. We don't progress the way we should progress. She can sit right here next to me. She's an elevated. So, so there are 10 offenses. Anybody want to throw out some of these offenses? What's the first aparadh that takes away our ability to chant the holy name with success?
Blaspheming the devotees.
To blaspheme the devotees of the Lord who've dedicated their life. Let's close the door all the way. Who've dedicated their life to the propagation of the holy names of the Lord. So we say blaspheme the devotees, but actually to blaspheme any living entity is going to affect our ability to chant. We can chant and chant and chant, but if you're not seeing that this person is developing the fruits of chanting, then we understand they're actually internally or externally, they're committing these offenses. So to blaspheme the devotees of the Lord. What's the second offense? Lavanga.
Not having faith.
Consider the names of demigods like Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, equal to and independent of the holy name of Lord Krishna.
Consider the names of the demigods like Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent of the holy name of Lord Vishnu. So this is an offense that we're not understanding God's position. We're not actually in full understanding of what is the theology presented by the Vedas. And so with that understanding, the Padma Purana says the person becomes a Prashandi. They can't actually understand the transcendental nature of God because they're confusing these other beings to be the Supreme Lord, but they're not. Although they are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, they are very powerful like the Supreme Lord. They're not the Supreme Lord. So, yes. Third is to disobey the orders of the spiritual master, to not take instruction of the Guru. Four is to blaspheme these Vedic literatures. 5 is to consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna as imagination. 6 is to give some mundane interpretation on the holy name. Like, when we chant, we're breathing a certain way and it's causing this in our heads and all this. Yeah, this mundane interpretation of chanting. Chanting is a transcendental activity. 7 is to commit a sin on the strength of chanting. To think that, I'm chanting Hare Krishna, so I'm going to go do so much nonsense and be relieved of that nonsense because I'm chanting. That's a very rascal mentality.
Chant extra rounds.
Chant extra rounds. I know.
I'm going to do this.
For every cigarette, I'm just going to chant one extra round.
I will do every day nonsense and every day I chant.
No. 8 is to consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna as one of these, like a normal good deed, fruit of activities offered in the Vedas. So, like we say, it's not just a pious deed to chant Hare Krishna. It's transcendental, loving, devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And 9 is to instruct faithless persons about the glories of the holy name. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that more specifically it means to initiate an unworthy person who has no faith in the holy name. And 10 is to not have complete faith in the chanting of the holy name and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. So,
Is it number 11?
yeah. Yeah. So it's number 11. If it's actually the most important. It's the most important of all. If one is inattentive while chanting, all other offenses are born. But if one is attentive, all other offenses can't come. So it's very important to chant with proper attention as to be conscious of what it is we're doing. So, yeah, not to get, this isn't going to be a 10 offenses class. I just wanted to hit that these 10 things take away our ability to chant properly, to really engage in this meditation process. This specific process, which is the most powerful process, these things take that power away. So what is the recommended, how do we actually really overcome these? Some of these are very hard to overcome, wouldn't you say? I would say. I struggle all the time.
Maintaining material attachments.
Right? How do we overcome? What if we just chant more with more offenses? We were in Mayapur with Balaram Shakti, and it was Kartik. So in Mayapur, your rounds are amplified 1,000 times, and in Kartik, they're amplified 1,000 times. So a round in Mayapur is amplified 1,000,000 times. And so Balaram Shakti said, "I just chanted 1,000,000 inattentive rounds."
There's 10 defenses.
Yeah.
And then follow those also help.
Yeah. That's true in Bhaktivinoda. But there's another instruction Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives. The main way to defeat these offenses is simply one attitude, one very important attitude. How do we gain taste for chanting constantly? Trinada Pisanichena Taroeva Saishnina Amanena Madhanena Kirtanesvara Hari. Lord Chaitanya, he gave 8 instructions as to what is the glories of the holy name, what is the glories. His eight instructions, Shastastikam, and the most important, according to our acharyas, is this. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street, becoming more tolerant than a tree, and offering all respects to others while not expecting any respect for oneself. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. So this is the real way in which we chant Hare Krishna. The real proper attitude to overcome offenses is this Trinada Pisanichena Taroeva Sahishnina. One should think themselves lower than the straw in the street, lower than a blade of grass, and should become more tolerant than a tree. One should have great forbearance in the chanting and should become very, very humble like grass. Why is grass humble? Because when you step on grass, grass never complains. Grass falls down and then grass gets itself back up. Grass is always under everybody's feet. No one even thinks about the poor grass getting stepped on. So we should think ourselves like that, which might be very difficult. It's kind of one of those things where I got to think of myself like lower than the straw in the street. You start picturing yourself as like grass or something like that. How many of you have done that? All right. Well, at least just take it very literally. Think of yourself like straw in the street. What does it actually mean? So sometimes actually, I'm speaking to certain, these like new agers come here and I'm like, they see I'm doing service or I with someone, with a class or whatever, not that it has anything to do with me. They say, I'm really no one, I have no power, I'm a fallen soul. And they're like, I will never say that about myself. I am powerful. I am free. I'm an empowered person. I will take my power back. And so you see them, that's their idea of spirituality.
I always get like, well, you need to have confidence in yourself.
Well, we do need to have some confidence.
Yeah,
Rupa Goswami says that.
Speaking, humility and pride.
Yeah, right. So they, it's kind of a teaching that goes out in the world today. This like, we need to feel really full of ourselves. It's kind of like sometimes that passes as spirituality. Yeah. And so what is that? That is nonsense. Because anybody who actually is spiritual realizes I'm very small. You can't come in contact with God and start thinking very much of yourself. Then you've not come in contact with God. One who comes in contact with God starts to realize himself smaller and smaller and smaller because he's starting to realize that God is very, very big. Very, very big. So you chant Hare Krishna, you'll become humble actually. If you chant very sincerely, you'll become humble because You can't. You have to realize how these devotees, these, this practice, this personality of Godhead, Krishna, so much greater than I. And so one becomes humble. And there's the famous analogy given that when a tree is full of fruits, it hangs very low. Me and Lita were just at her aunt's house, and her aunt had a very big peach tree. There were so many fruits that the branches broke off. This tree was very, very humble. So he was hanging very low. So when we actually have fruits in our spiritual life, we become very humble. We think of ourselves very low. We think of ourselves very meager, inadequate. And then tolerant like a tree. What is this tolerance like a tree? That the tree, you can cut it down. First off, the tree does so much for everybody. The tree gives us fire, gives us shade in the summer, gives us fruits in the winter. It gives us fire. It's stands there in the sun all day in the summer, stands in the cold all day in the winter. It's oxygen, right? Yeah. Tree does so many things. It never complains. You can pick its fruits, pick its leaves, and go say, G plus G and a heart. You can go carve that in the tree, and it never complains.
Shades.
Right? It gives us shade. As I say, it gives us shade in the summer and firewood in the winter. Never complains. And when the tree is starving and thirsty, it never asks anybody for help. So this is
never claim its own fruit. Always meant for others.
It never takes its own fruits, only gives its own fruits. So we should become like trees, tolerant like a tree, meaning that we tolerate all the insults to ourselves, and we don't insult anybody back, right? We don't tolerate insults against other devotees. That's a different story. But we tolerate so many things. And when chanting Hare Krishna, your mind wants to go so many places, but we have forbearance. We keep chanting. I will chant my rounds. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Such a person can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. And such a person will really taste the nectar of chanting Hare Krishna. They'll really, really taste that. So, one can say, like, it's maybe a little dangerous to start thinking of ourselves very low. We can start getting like a self-esteem thing going on. And I think that most people in the material world are extraordinarily insecure about so many things. So how is it we actually have real humility? Because we can have this feeling lower than the straw in the street, it's kind of hard to do. And it kind of makes us suffer a little bit because, we start seeing everybody's better than me and this guy. And we start feeling like this thing that comes up in the material world called envy starts kind of arising. Oh, that's not good. So how do we overcome that? How do we have this real humility? So real humility has to be paired with this thing called gratitude. When one has gratitude, one can feel themselves lower than the straw in the street and be very grateful to be around everybody because they see everybody is greater than them. So when I see such a devotee, I think, I'm so grateful to be in their association. I'm grateful to be in all of your association. Such a person feels themselves very low, but is grateful to be with who they're with. And that gratitude develops an attitude of service. The attitude of service is pleasing to Krishna. And one develops these Vaishnava qualities, and such a person can obtain the mercy of God. And that mercy of God is the solution to everything we've suffered in our lives. So I want to read a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is a verse spoken by Krishna in the 4th canto to Maharaj Prithu. Lord Vishnu speaking to Maharaj Prithu, and he's explaining how pleased he is with this Maharaj Prithu. And he says, "My dear king, I am very captivated by your elevated qualities and excellent behavior, and thus I am very favorably inclined toward you. You may therefore ask from me any benediction you like. One who does not possess elevated qualities and behavior cannot possibly achieve my favor simply by performance of sacrifices, severe austerities, or mystic yoga. But I always remain equipoised in the heart of one who is equipoised in all circumstances. So this is a very full power verse, very powerful. So the Lord is saying that, Krishna, I'm captivated by who you are, Krishna. So if you develop the proper qualities, then Krishna becomes captivated by you. You can actually captivate Krishna. And Krishna becomes favorably inclined toward you, which if Krishna is favorably inclined toward you, things are going to go pretty good. Let me tell you. He says, therefore you may ask for me any benediction you like. But one who does not possess these qualities, in other words, one who's doing all these, they're doing so many spiritual activities, but they're not developing any spiritual qualities, such a person cannot make any spiritual advancement. Such a person is powerless. So, even by performing severe austerities, mystic yoga, performing one's duty properly, is not going to please Krishna. But one who remains equipoised in all circumstances, what does that mean? Tolerant. Humble and tolerant in all circumstances. Such a person is always going to be pleasing to Krishna. Krishna is always inclined toward them. So there are 26 qualities of a devotee. Now I'm just going to read these qualities. And these are what develop when we chant Hare Krishna. When we do this process sincerely, this is the actual result. And if someone's not showing all these, they may still be devotees, but they're at a very lower level. But if they have devotion to Krishna, they'll get there. So the first quality of a devotee is, actually I always think this is describing Gauranga Prem itself, is that they're kind to everyone. They do not quarrel with anyone. It's Gauranga Prem. Fixed in the absolute truth, equal to everyone, faultless, charitable, mild, clean, simple, benevolent, peaceful, completely attached to Krishna, has no material hankering, meek, steady, self-controlled, does not eat more than required, sane, respectful, passionate, friendly, poetic, expert, and silent. These are the 26 qualities of a devotee. These are the qualities which captivate Krishna. And so, out of all those qualities, the most important one is completely attached to Krishna. Completely attached to Krishna. Even if one's not humble, but they're completely attached to Krishna, they'll become humble. So we develop attachment to Krishna by hearing and chanting. Even if we're offensive, we keep hearing and chanting, we'll develop this attachment to Krishna. So, gratitude, when we have a heart full of gratitude and humility in all of the tough circumstances that come upon us, then we become eligible for liberation. Krishna says, Matra sparshas tukondya, sitoshna sukadukada, agamai paino nityas, tamstatik shava bharataha. So one who is tolerant, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and the disappearance of the winter and summer seasons. They arrive from sense perception only, O Scion of Bharata. One should be able to tolerate them without being disturbed. So one should tolerate happiness and distress without being disturbed. Then he says, Yam hina vyatayante te, purusham purushashava, samadukam sukham dhiram somritat vayakalpate. Such a person who remains the same in happiness and distress is eligible for liberation. We become eligible for liberation by remaining sama, by remaining steady. What is that steadiness? We become attached to Krishna. We always remain humble. We always remain grateful, no matter how horrible the circumstances. Someone who's a very elevated soul, he never says, God, why me? He never says that. He understands. He says, man, God, I deserve so much worse. I'm grateful that you're just giving me all of this. This is the attitude of a devotee. So this humility is actually what conquers hearts. This love and kindness in the heart of devotees, this compassion, these qualities that develop, they become the decorations or the ornaments of a devotee. So the Lord himself, Krishna, appeared 500 years ago in the form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to demonstrate these beautiful qualities. And there's a very famous verse spoken by Lord Brahma to Krishna in regards to this. We're going to have Kirtan Yagya say it in Sanskrit. Tenu Kampam. Yeah.
Tatteni kampam susumik samano.
Say it melodiously though.
Tatteni kampam susumik samano.
Sorry to pronounce
Let's
it.
find out.
It's a beautiful verse, but I know the English, so we're good.
You can go ahead in English and I find out.
So Lord Brahma is praying to Krishna.
That's the last line. I
Yeah,
can't remember the third line.
Daibak, we all know the last line there. Third line's always the one everybody forgets. So Lord Brahma, he kind of messed up a little bit, and he upset Krishna by stealing his friends, the cowherd boys and the calves, and stealing them for a year. And there's a whole story behind that. So then Brahma, he realized I messed up, and Krishna's God, and so he came to apologize to Krishna. He spoke these prayers, beautiful prayers in the Bhagavatam.
Ready?
Yeah.
Sattenu kampam susamiksamano bhunjanaiva vipakam ridbag vapurbhir vigradan namaste jive tayo mukti pade sadaya.
And read the translation.
The translation goes, My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words and body, is surely eligible for liberation, but it has become his rightful claim.
So it has become his rightful claim, one who sincerely and patiently accepts all of the karma that comes upon them, while in their heart offering Krishna obeisances. That person becomes eligible for liberation, and it becomes his rightful claim. So that very same Brahma came as one of Lord Chaitanya's associates, Haridas Thakur. And so Haridas Thakur is called the Nama Acharya. He's the absolute, the Acharya, the supreme example for someone who chanted the holy name. Haridas Thakur would chant 192 rounds a day. So a round is 108 Maha Mantras. And so he would chant 192 sets of 108. So that's 300,000 names of Krishna every single day. Haridas Thakur would chant. He would chant for about 18 hours every day. He wouldn't sleep. He would just chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And Haridas Thakur had every imaginable saintly quality. Every imaginable saintly quality. And because of this, he obtained the full mercy of Krishna. So this humility is there in one who chants the holy name. So Haridas, he was born in an Islamic family. So at that time in India, of course, it was ruled by Islamic. It was an Islamic state. So the Hindus were kind of suppressed. The followers of the Vedic religion were suppressed by these Islamic kings. And so they weren't allowed to chant, and especially it was considered really, really heinous if an Islamic person became a Hindu or started following the Vedic religion. That person was punished very severely by the Islamic authorities. And so Haridas Thakur, being born in an Islamic family and also being the supreme example of chanting Hare Krishna, obviously made some enemies in regards to his activities in spiritual life. So Haridas was arrested by this Islamic king. The Islamic king said, why don't you just follow your own scriptures? You know, it's embarrassing to us that you're chanting Hare Krishna. Haridas Thakur said, no, there's only one God, and I'm chanting his name Krishna. I'll continue to chant. Do what you will. Do with me what you like. They put Haridas Thakur in prison, and Haridas Thakur just kept chanting, and all the prisoners, he turned them all into devotees. He got them all to start chanting. He just continued to chant very happily. And so finally they brought him back and they said, you know what, Haridas, if you don't stop chanting, we're going to have to kill you. He said, I'm not this body. You can do with me what you like, but I'm not going to stop chanting. So they said, all right, we're going to beat him in 22 marketplaces. So they ruthlessly and mercilessly beat Haridas Thakur, whipping him, beating him, kicking him with clubs for 20 marketplaces. They went to a marketplace, did that to him, another marketplace. And Haridas wouldn't die. He just kept chanting. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It's described that as Haridas was getting beaten, sometimes he would occasionally look up and smile at his attackers as they continuously beat him. And finally, after getting beaten for 22 marketplaces, they said, my God, man, you have to die. Because if you live, because we were supposed to kill you. Haridas said, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that. We died. Haridas died. So they threw his body in the river because it's like considered very ugly. It's considered very ugly to be thrown in the river, like in the Islamic faith. You know, they should be buried properly. So Haridas was thrown in a river. He floated down for a bit. He went down the river, got up, and continued walked back to the village, chanting Hare Krishna, unfazed and unaffected by whatever thing they did. So his tolerance was immeasurable. And actually, while Haridas was being beaten, what was he saying? What was he praying? He was praying, my dear Lord Krishna, I know that these people are creating offense by punishing me, by hurting me because I'm your devotee. But please have mercy on them. Don't punish them. Don't hurt them. Don't let them face any of the karma that's going to come from hurting me. We hear this. There's one other great devotee of the Lord who said a very similar thing. As Jesus was being crucified, he said, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. This is the compassion of such a devotee who's taken to the chanting of Hare Krishna. So Haridas went back into the village and he said, you know, I'm back. And the king was like, how are you alive? And they realized, oh, this is actually a saintly person. He can't be hurt. And so many of them became devotees. There's so many beautiful stories of Haridas, but later on, what was the result of this? At Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his form of Lord Gauranga, he was dancing and expounding the Krishna consciousness movement all over Nadia, all over this land of Navadvip. And so Lord Chaitanya, he's Krishna himself. One day he went into the mood of Krishna in the house of Srivas Thakur at Srivas Sangam. Lord Chaitanya sat on the altar and he became Krishna. And everybody was witnessing that Lord Chaitanya is Krishna himself. And he was calling all the devotees in. He was calling all the devotees and he called Haridas. Haridas was weeping in the sight of his Lord. His Lord is standing in front of him. Haridas began to weep. And Lord Chaitanya said, Haridas, no one is more dear to me than you. You're the dearest person to me. Because even while you were being beaten, you were asking these men to forgive you. And because I love you so much because of your qualities, because of your chanting, I couldn't bear to see you suffer. Therefore, I took all of these whippings on my own back. And so then Lord Chaitanya showed Haridas that he had actually taken all of the assault from the punishers, the tormentors. So,
I was waiting for that.
yeah. Mary Sachi's a big fan of the Chaitanya Bhagavat, so she's always reading. Nice answer. So, yes, there's so many instances too. Lord Chaitanya, he went and preached his Krishna consciousness all over the world. He was spreading the glories of the holy name all over the world, all over the universe, actually. And so, it's one thing, we can speak so much high philosophy. You know, this philosophy is like undefeatable. I can tell you that right now. You can't come at us with philosophy. We got the Bhagavad Gita. We always got an answer for you every time. You can't. Bhagavad Gita is not me, but the Bhagavad Gita. It's the sharpest of all philosophies. That's what proves it's Krishna speaking. This is Krishna. This is God, because he defeats all other philosophies. But we can say like that, but actually that's not what made it. Lord Chaitanya's movement attractive. Lord Chaitanya, he was so humble. Lord Chaitanya was the sweetest, he's God himself in the mood of his devotee, the humblest, sweetest person. And so Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he converted many stalwart impersonalist scholars to the path of bhakti. How is that? By his humility. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was going in Nadia preaching this Hare Krishna movement, but people were starting to become very inimical toward him. They didn't like this Nimai Pandit who had now become, all of a sudden become a dancing devotee of the Lord, and he was getting everybody else to dance and chant. And so they were envious of Lord Chaitanya's movement, and therefore they were destined to suffer. They were destined to have horrendous results. And Lord Chaitanya, out of his compassion, he said, I came to deliver them, but I'm actually condemning them because now they're envying me. Now they're hating me. When I came to save them, they've turned on me. So therefore, I will take the sannyas order of life. So a sannyas is the final vow for a monastic person, that such a person is completely renounced from the world, gives up everything, shaves their head, and wanders throughout the world with a water pot and a stick, preaching and teaching this message of spiritual life. So Lord Chaitanya, to the great dismay of all his friends and associates in the land of Mayapur, took the sannyas order of life. It was described that it took days to cut his hair because the barber couldn't do it. It was just too hard to cut the beautiful hair of Lord Chaitanya. And so Lord Chaitanya took sannyas, and then everybody was obliged to pay obeisances to him and get the mercy of paying obeisances to the Lord. So Lord Chaitanya took sannyas and then he left. He went across India, chanting and dancing. And everywhere he would go, anybody would see him would start chanting Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Everywhere they would go, they would see that this beautiful, beautiful golden sannyasi is singing and chanting so beautifully, playing the kartals. So it's so wonderful, so glorious. And Lord Chaitanya went to Jagannath Puri, which is a very famous temple in India. And in that temple, when he saw the beautiful sight of Lord Jagannath, Lord Chaitanya fell unconscious and appeared to be dead. And so this very stalwart scholar of impersonal philosophy appeared before him, named Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was the greatest scholar in all of India. He was the guru of the king of Orissa. Many sannyasis would come to him to learn. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was so captivated. Oh my God, this is the most beautiful person I've ever seen. And so Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, bring him to my house. They had to see, is he dead? So they thought he was dead. So they put some cotton to his nose and they started saying, there's something there. He's still alive. He's still breathing a little bit. So they had to wake him. So how did they wake Lord Chaitanya? How do you wake Lord Chaitanya?
Chanting.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Lord Chaitanya awoke. And Lord Chaitanya immediately paid obeisances to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Oh, you are so elevated. You are my father. You are such a learned scholar. I'm bowing before you. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya asked him, you are a sannyasi, and you are the most beautiful person I've ever seen. How have you taken this sannyas order of life so young? Surely you will fall down, and you're not studying Vedanta. You're not studying philosophy. You're not practicing meditation. How can you maintain your vow of sannyas? Let me teach you. Let me instruct you on Vedanta. Lord Chaitanya said, oh, kind. Instruct me. By your mercy, I can maintain my vow. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, all right, sit down here. Let us speak. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya began to speak about Vedanta philosophy for 7 days. Lord Chaitanya just sat there. For 7 days, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya just kept speaking. After 7 days, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, what is going on? I spoke for 7 days. Don't you have anything to say? Haven't I changed you? I've given you my everything. Lord Chaitanya said, yes, thank you, but I understand Vedanta perfectly, but everything you said is like a cloud covering the sun. In fact, it's nonsense. So Mahacharya's heart broke. Oh no. So well then, you explain Vedanta. And then Lord Chaitanya began to speak Vedanta. And Sarvabhaumacharya was blown away because Lord Chaitanya spoke Vedanta. Being that Lord Chaitanya is the compiler of Vedanta, Vadashta Savira Hameva Vedyo Vedanta Kritveda Vedeva Cham. Krishna is the compiler of Vedanta. He's the knower of Vedanta, and he's the object of Vedanta. So, Lord Krishna, in the form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, spoke. And he blew Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's mind. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya immediately became a devotee of the Lord, realizing that he was flawed in all his understanding, all his impersonalism. He was interpreting all these scriptures in an impersonal way because he was envious of the personality of Godhead, but being purified by the service he rendered to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he became a pure devotee. And not just a pure devotee, like he became fanatically pure devotee. And so Lord Chaitanya defeated Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya with his humility. This is the weapon of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is his beauty and humility. And so the next day, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, his life was changed. He had a come to Krishna moment. And he went to sleep. And he was a very, very strict, dry. It's described that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was like a dry oil cake. Yeah, whatever that is. But that's what he described it. An oil cake in which the oil has been squeezed out, just dry, very dry philosophy. Just speculating all day. No juice, no rasa, no happiness, just speculation. And so the next day, Lord Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya woke up, and he was very fanatical. People like that are very fanatical about following all the rules very intensely and strictly because they don't have any taste. And so Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya went to sleep, and the next day, Lord Chaitanya said, "Oh, my dear Bhattacharya, I brought you some prasadam from the Lord Jagannath." Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya immediately rose out of the bed and said, "Krishna, Krishna, Krishna." Without washing his hands, he ate that prasadam in great ecstasy, completely transformed. And he went into ecstasy from taking prasadam. He became a devotee of the Lord, ecstatic, happy and joyful. So he went from dry to moist. No, fully, because rasa means juice, nectar. He became juicy, filled with the rasa, the nectar of serving Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So in this way, Lord Chaitanya, he moved so many people with his humility. And then more famous, or just as famous, is the great Mayavadi scholar Prakasananda Saraswati. This man was a great sannyasi in Varanasi, the city of Lord Shiva. He was a stout follower of Shankaracharya, and he had thousands of disciples. He was considered a very great sannyasi. And so Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, on his way to Vrindavan in his ecstasy, on his way to Vrindavan, he actually went through this Jarikanda forest. And it's described that Lord Chaitanya, he would go through the Jarikanda forest chanting, "Krishna, Krishna, 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 hey, Krishna, 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 hey, Rama, Raghava, Rama, Raghava, Rama, Raghava, Rakshama, Krishna, Keshava, Krishna, Keshava, Krishna, Keshava, Pahimam." Lord Chaitanya would go chant like this, which means, "Krishna, Krishna, 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 Krishna. Krishna, please protect me. Krishna, please maintain me." Lord Chaitanya would go on chanting like this. And in his chanting through the forest of Jarikanda, there were many animals, tigers, elephants. And every time these animals would see him, they would begin to chant, "Hare Krishna." Described that once a tiger came out to attack Lord Chaitanya, growling. Lord Chaitanya said, "Chant Hare Krishna," and the tiger went, "Rah!" and started chanting Hare Krishna. This really is a beautiful painting of it, where the tiger's like, "I don't want any Prabhu." Okay, thank you. Full. Or the tiger's, well, she's a vegan. We got to go get her the vegan plate. Get her a plate from the restaurant. Yeah. So the tiger uses a nice painting of the tiger dancing like this, and so it's described Lord Chaitanya was going. He was crossing a river in the Jarikanda forest, and there was elephants bathing. And immediately when they saw Lord Chaitanya, they all began to stand up with their trunks raised and chant Hare Krishna. Lord Chaitanya made all the animals in Jarikanda forest chant. And so he walked all the way from Jagannath Puri to Varanasi. And in Varanasi, there was the great Mayavadi scholar Prakasananda Saraswati. And so Lord Chaitanya, he didn't want anything to do with these people. I don't want to associate with them. They're Mayavadis. I don't want anything to do with them. Lord Chaitanya skillfully avoided them. But they were thinking, who's this? This Sri Chaitanya, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. He's here and he's just chanting and dancing. He's a sentimental fool. He's just chanting, dancing, and he's feasting. This is not spiritual. So they were criticizing like this. And so Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't care. But his devotees, they care very deeply when someone criticizes Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We say, oh, it's very, very unbearable for a devotee of the Lord to hear such criticism of the Lord. So the devotees begged him. He says, they're having a meal. All the sannyasis in Varanasi are invited to come eat here, and you should come also. And they didn't want, Lord Chaitanya didn't want to, but because his devotee asked, he said, I will go, because I wanted to relieve your distress. So all the sannyasis, they think themselves Narayan, because someone who's in illusion, they start to think themselves God. Oh, I am God. And so all these sannyasis, they thought, I am God. So they were sitting there. They all call each other Narayan, 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 which is the name of God. And they're sitting on their very elevated place, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes. And where does he sit?
By the shoes.
He sits by the shoes. Yes, he goes and sits in the place people are washing their feet very humbly. And so the sannyasis, they see. Actually, the sannyasis, they worship the light, the Brahman. And they see there's the Lord Chaitanya's body. Our object of worship, our emanating from the body of this sannyasi. And so they're captive the most beautiful being I've ever experienced in my life. And so they approached Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They said, my dear sir, why are you sitting by the shoes? You are a sannyasi. You should sit with us. Lord Chaitanya said, I'm a great fool. I'm no one. So they were moved by this humility. And so they began to inquire, why is it that you're a sannyasi yet you don't study Vedanta? You don't study the scriptures. You don't speculate. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, when I met my guru, I was the greatest scholar ever seen, not me, my pandit. But my guru said, you're so much of a fool, you can never understand Vedanta. Therefore, for you, just chant Hare Krishna. The idea is that in this age, we're unqualified to understand any of this high-level stuff, really. If we chant, we can understand everything. And so Lord Chaitanya began to chant Hare Krishna. And then he came back to his guru. He said, what kind of mantra is this? Tears are flowing from my eyes. I'm shivering. The hairs of my body are standing on end. I'm experiencing Krishna. He said, what is this mantra? He says, this is prema bhakti. This is love of God. And so then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to explain the philosophy of Krishna consciousness to these sannyasis. And all of them became devotees, great devotees of the Lord, by the humility of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There's so many instances of these Vaishnava qualities, how the Lord is moved and captured by the humility. He protects such devotees. So this attitude of altitude, to become elevated, to go to a high altitude of spiritual life, we have to have a proper attitude. And that comes into everything we do. We have to chant Hare Krishna with great sincerity, great longing, great humility. Because we've turned away from Krishna. We've come to this material world. We've come here out of our own fruition to suffer. And when you chant Hare Krishna, you're asking Krishna, please accept me in your service. I don't want to serve this body anymore. I don't want to serve this material energy anymore. I want to serve you. Therefore, you chant Hare Krishna with great longing and sincerity. One should hear the teachings of the Vedas with great humility and ask questions with great humility. With a deep desire to know, not a challenging spirit. If you have a challenging spirit, you can never get the mercy possible. But with great humility, one inquires. If there's any cups of the stuff, I'll just take a cup.
Oh, now you want some.
Yeah,
Okay.
Oh.
Thank you. Yes. So, any questions?
I have actually something to share. So I don't know if you've seen the 4 questions, but there's a book, which I read today. Your attitude determines your altitude.
Oh yeah.
And,
I'm sure she could ask.
and there's a story. Swami?
Bhakti Tirtha Swami.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Hare
And
Krishna.
I don't know if you want to read it, but out loud.
We had a whole thing with one very, very bad attitude devotee today was very critical of some kirtan we were doing in the mood of Bhakti Swami. So
But it's it describes his end, when he was leaving his body and the attitude that he had. It was very sweet the way that it was explained. So.
yeah, I mean that's one of my favorite stories of all time. Bhakti Swami is one of my most inspirational gurus and people that I've read his books, and I love him. But his attitude was that, I can kind of sum it up, that, Bhakti Swami he got a very, very virulent form of cancer. Actually, Bhakti Swami, he actually prayed to Krishna that he suffers he was obsessed with a devotee named Vasudev Datta his whole life. Vasudev Datta was one of the dearest associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because Vasudev Datta was passionate. Vasudev Datta prayed to Lord Chaitanya, let me suffer all the reactions of all living entities in all the world and liberate everybody else. This was Vasudev Datta's mood. And so Lord Chaitanya used to say, I am a Vasudev Datta man. I simply exist for the service of Vasudev Datta. Lord Chaitanya loved this Vasudev Datta very dearly. And so Bhakti Swami became obsessed with devotee and tried to cultivate that mood. And Bhakti Swami, because he was a different type of level than we can come to, most people can come to. But Bhakti Swami prayed, please, I want to accept all the suffering for those in this movement. I prayed like that, and he got this cancer, virulent cancer, skin cancer actually, on his foot, on a birthmark on his foot, and it spread. And there was just nothing they tried worked. And so it became very evident Bhakti Swami was going to leave his very last moment of his life. He was fully surrendered to Krishna. And in fact, inspiring everybody, uplifting everybody, and was taking back to Godhead. So, yeah, our attitude determines our altitude. Any other questions? Follow, Gopinath, Das.
So, thanks. Nice class.
Thank you for being here.
So my question is in regards to the Trinity verse and also self-talk. So you mentioned kind of in passing, sort of making fun of the New Agers, and I agree with that, but I feel like sometimes some of what they do is sort of helpful, like as far as saying affirmations. So in the attempt to reprogram your mind and heal yourself from things like self-love, self-esteem, toxic shame, guilt, things like that.